Welcome to Prepper Nation. I am John. Thank you very much for being here. Whether you're brand new to the channel or you're one of those old usual suspects, truly appreciate that. Also, yesterday, I appreciate all the prayers and well wishes. Y'all are awesome. So, y'all are busy. I'm not going to waste a lot of your time. This is going to be a shorter video. It's kind of the new format, if you will. Want to get straight to the point. So, on December the 3rd, there was a pro-Palestinian march protest uh, in Philadelphia. And quickly, this thing kind of went off of the rails. It became not overly violent, but there was a lot of vandalism and it turned into a crime spree, if you will. And during this time, a Jewish restaurant was targeted in Philadelphia specifically. Like, this mob of people, they're not protesters to me at this point. Once they become violent, of course, they're a mob, and they gathered outside of this Jewish restaurant. They began shouting inside obscenities. They're shouting threatening things inside toward the owner who was Jewish, and they began to mark the windows and things with stickers. Hey, this is a Jewish business. I think they accused them of genocide and stuff like, they're not in the Middle East. They just happen to be Jewish, but these people don't have the stones to go to the Middle East and get involved in a war. So they just want to harass people that live here in the United States because that's what, cowards do or whatever. But anyway, the AP reported, now this was back in late November, that up to one third of Jewish college students are now being forced to hide their identity. Three universities in particular were mentioned in the AP report. Again, that was back in late November. The University of Chicago, UCLA, and Rutgers. These three actually told the Jewish students, hey, maybe don't tell people that you're Jewish here in the United States. And folks, I'm here to tell you this morning, that's not okay. That's a troubling sign of things to come. Nazi Germany. A lot of people think that the Third Reich, Nazi Germany, actually began with brown shirts out in the streets marking businesses like we're seeing now. Okay, but it didn't start there. It actually started with universities first. So we're seeing the same pattern. Okay, you see it's happening with universities. Um, Now a month and some change later, or roughly a month later, now we're beginning to see Jewish business owners and businesses be targeted here in the United States. And of course, with the Third Reich, it eventually became all political opponents, not just the Jewish people. People that think about the Holocaust immediately go to the Jewish community, right? And rightfully so. But a lot of people were killed during the Holocaust who were not Jewish. They had a different ideology. They were political opponents, the whole nine yards. So bad things are definitely on the way here in the United States because nobody seems to be standing up for these people. Okay. The targeting of the Jewish community is happening right now. Again, it's not okay. And I would be saying that for any community out there. All right. Just for the people that are going to bash me or whatever in the comments, I don't care if you're pro Palestinian or Palestinian. I don't care if you're pro Ukrainian. I don't care if you're pro Russian. I don't care what your religious viewpoints are, what your political viewpoints are, what color you are. It's not okay to target a certain group of people just because, right? It's a fallacy in the first place because, again, the people here in the United States of America, business owners and things who happen to be Jewish, have nothing to do with what Netanyahu is doing over in the Middle East. But there's just no room for it. But I want you to understand this morning, pay close attention, okay? It's not going to end with the Jewish community. All right. Next come the Christians. Christians are eventually going to be persecuted in much the same way because nobody's standing up. Then guess who comes? Conservatives, people that have a political ideology that's not in line with, that they're trying to turn this place into either, it seems to be a tug of war between communism and, hey, let's turn the United States into the new Palestine because that's such a great area of the country to live in. But I digress. You're hearing all kinds of propagandist terms like a Zionism and stuff like this. Ridiculous. This is the United States of America. That's on another continent. Let that continent figure out what they're going to do. Here in the United States, we've got our own problems. I'm pro America first, don't apologize for it. But anybody that is deemed a threat to the agenda, eventually they're coming for you. And I can't believe that people are falling for this again. I can't believe I'm seeing this in the United States of America, folks, to be honest with you, because the first time around, it was pitiful when this happened in Nazi Germany. But now we have an example, a historical example to fall back onto. How does this end? All you have to do is pick up a history book. It ends with train cars, it ends with camps, it ends with extermination and things like that. And it's not okay. But I've been thinking about this for the past couple of days. And there was a poem that was written a few years after the Holocaust. Okay. And some of you have brought it up in chat before. You know you have. Listen up. I'm not going to read the whole thing off, but it's called First They Came, I think is the name of it. And I'm going to read the last verse of this thing, okay? Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Some of y'all have heard that before. Maybe in other communities, some of you have read it. The point is, if we don't stand up for these other groups and we allow this to happen to other groups and other demographics of people, eventually it's going to be done to us. Can't hide. Can't hide from these people. All right. Um, put your differences aside for 5 minutes. Okay. Again, I don't care what you look like here at Prepper Nation, what you happen to believe in terms of faith, where you stand on the Russian Ukrainian war. Put all this aside for a second. And let's just agree this morning it's not okay to target groups of people based on their religion or spiritual beliefs or what they happen to look like, things like this. Okay. It's not okay to bring violence against people in other areas of the world that have absolutely nothing to do with the Middle East. If you can't agree with that this morning, you are a terrorist. You need to go ahead and at least own up to it. Be a man or a woman and at least own up to it. Own it. Um, but the rest of us need to come together and we need to understand that it's not okay. Again, I would be saying this about any other groups and things. Forget about China and Russia for 5 minutes. Realize that the enemy is already here, as we were talking about the other morning. They're already here. We already have Palestinian flags flying. We already have other nations buying up parcels of land and stuff. We already have nationalists, foreign nationalists who have come across the border in droves. Um, but understand fear gets us nowhere. So, in order to stand up to these people, because what I haven't been able to figure out, it finally hit me late last night. Why do people not stand up? Most of us have at least heard of the Holocaust. It's not like you can't Google it for 5 minutes and find out what happened and how it started. Nobody's that ignorant, man. People know how to Google stuff, right? So I was asking myself, why haven't people stood up? Because I watched this happen. I remember talking about this as well during the pandemic. There was a black family that was booted from a restaurant. They weren't served because they didn't have the whiskey shot passport, shall we say. And I remember at that time saying, it's not so disturbing that the restaurant is kicking these people out. What's disturbing is there's an entire restaurant filled with people and nobody stood up for these folks. Nobody stood up and said this is not okay. In fact, there were a few people cheering for it. This mob mentality. But I think having thought about this for a few days, folks, why haven't people stood up already? And I think most people are either afraid of confrontation or they do their very best to avoid confrontation, right? I think that's fair to say. Rather than rock the boat and make waves, people are just more okay with sitting there and keeping their mouth shut and putting their head down, putting their head in the sand. And I'm not the type of person that goes out looking for confrontation. But what I'm here to tell you this morning is sometimes confrontation is necessary. You know, times like this, confrontation is necessary. The people that were threatening the owner of this business, the people that were vandalizing this business, because obviously at this point, the police, they're not going to do anything, right, to help these people. Marking this business as a Jewish owned business, what should have happened in a perfect world is the patrons of this restaurant should have went outside and gave these people a beat down and put an exclamation mark on it so they did not do this again. Sometimes, unfortunately, confrontation is necessary, and sometimes that leads to violence. And I think maybe people are scared of that. Okay, I'm not advocating for anything illegal or anything immoral. In fact, I'm advocating that you do the right thing, that you do the moral thing, that you stand up for people who are surrounded by a mob that can't defend themselves, they can't speak up on their own. They're being shouted at, okay? Counter violence is okay. You get what you put in. I love that expression because it applies to so many different things. You work hard, on payday, you get paid. You get what you put in. But it works both ways. If you're going to be violent and you're going to threaten people and you're going to wear a mask while you do it, and blah, 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 then to me, counterbalance is okay. You want to shout and you want to threaten me, the mask is coming off and the beat down is going to it's going to happen at that point. Folks, at some point we have to stand up. I'll leave it here, but we're sitting here, we talk about how we're losing our freedoms, okay? We didn't earn those freedoms. Our veterans kept them for us for sure in our active duty. And they've maintained these freedoms for us. Absolutely. And thank you for your service. But our founding fathers earned all of this stuff for us in the beginning. And our founding fathers did this because they were confrontational. They didn't sit around and get pushed around and look the other way while bad things were happening. They understood there's a line in the sand, and at some point, if we're going to be free, we're gonna have to become confrontational. So you need to make that decision this morning. Are you going to be passive and not be free? Or are you going to be free and become confrontational? Because right now, the enemies of the United States of America that are already here, they don't believe you're going to become confrontational. And they're using that against you. That is the number one weapon that they're leaning on right now. But I don't know. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Take care. God bless.